I'm Sarah Whorf. I'm a professor at Humboldt State University in Northern California. This video, two-part video, is for my students in Printmaking I, and it's geared toward their project. So the Speedy Carve block and the Akua liquid pigments ink that we're going to use is all specific to their project. However, I hope that everybody finds this interesting and hopefully a little inspiring, and it gets you to want to try printing relief blocks at home. So let's get started. Just want to show you how I have my table set up and where my equipment is and what I'm using. So over here I have a dog bowl, but it could be any bowl. I like the dog bowls because they have a rubber ring on the bottom, so I can't knock them over as easily. I have water and then a good squirt, like tablespoon, full of dish detergent in there. I'm using Akua liquid pigment inks. I've got all generations of them here. These are water-based printmaking ink. They're very loose. So what you want to do is I've prepped by putting some in an open container and leaving it for a few hours or overnight until I get a nice kind of yogurt sort of consistency. That way it'll roll out with the brayer really nicely. Otherwise it's very watery and made kind of more for monoprinting. The Akua company does make a tack thickener, which I've used, but I find it's so much easier just to leave it out for a little while, and that takes care of that. I need some sort of palette. This is this old tray that I've had for a really long time, and it's tempered glass and it's from an old microwave. Something like that would be great, but that could be quite hard to find these days. So another option, this is just a placemat from the dollar store, and that'll work just great. I might tape it down on the table. I've got a sturdy table. I've got good light from the window. I also have some task lighting up above me. The other things I need are rags. These are old t-shirts that I've cut up. You can use these over and over again because this will just rinse out. I like them to be about hand size is sort of what I like. If they're smaller than that, then they're just annoying kind of thing. So you can see some of these I've used already and they're already stained a little bit. Need a palette knife. So this would be a regular inking knife for printmaking, but something like this, palette knife for painting would work. You could also just use bamboo sticks or a plastic spoon or whatever you've got. You need a brayer. This is a Speedball medium brayer, a 4-inch one, which is a good size for all different sized prints. And then I need a baron of some kind. A wooden spoon works great. And for this size print, I find that this is actually my favorite tool for printing. I just cut off the edge so it's easy to put in my pocket and I don't knock things over with the long end of it. Another thing that's handy to have is what's called a baron pad or a baron wada. These I make at school, HSU. It's a piece of birch ply. And then I've used an old piece of etching blanket that there's a little bit of baby oil on. I put a little non-skid pad thing underneath. And then with your baron, you can leave it resting on there and it just gets this teeny amount of oil, which helps it slide on your paper. What I decided at home is that I would make a nice sparkly one for me. And I just made it out of cardboard, and I had this glitter paint, which was a mistake, but I was determined. I just glued 2 pieces of corrugated cardboard together, put a few coats of glitter paint, and then a lot of coats of acrylic varnish on there to lock in the glitter. And then I just took some old pajamas, flannel, glued it on top. And now I've made my own little homemade baron wada. Just the teeniest amount of oil. I've put mineral oil on this one. You could also use baby oil, but I would not recommend using cooking oil like olive oil or anything like that because it will go rancid and you don't want that. So I've got my little pad there. The other things that I like to have is I like to have my carving tool on hand because once I print this for the first time, I might see stuff that I forgot to carve away, and I might want to immediately stop and fix it back up again before I go back to printing. So I always have a carving tool. The other thing is I've prepped a big stack of newsprint. I'm going to do practice prints on these, and I also like to blot my prints sometimes. So I have a good stack, 40 pieces maybe. I haven't measured these. I've just kind of eyeballed them and make sure that they're bigger than my printing block, generously bigger than my printing block. If you wanted to, you could cut them the same size as your print paper if you want to kind of practice setting down the paper with them. And I've cut a whole stack of my printmaking paper. What I'm using today for these prints is this Yasutomo sketch paper pad, which is inexpensive, good quality Hosho paper. I've figured out what paper size I wanted by making myself a little diagram. I have a 3x4 block, and I want to have even margins all around of 1 inch. So that gets me to 5x6 inches as being my paper size. If I wanted to have a little deeper margin, I could do like 5.5x6, something like that. But I think a 1 inch margin is sort of a minimum. And again, that is seen here, how that's going to look on the sheet. The next thing I want to set up is some sort of registration system. This is where I can make sure that my block is going to hit on a certain place on the piece of paper all the time. These Speedy Cut blocks, because they're squishy, you can ink them up and then, gently go like this to print them. The problem is, how do you always make it in exactly the same place? I mean, even if I'm really good at eyeballing, or I set up a different sort of jig, I can do that. But it's a lot easier if I set up some sort of jig where I can ink up the block, set it in the same place every time, and then maybe have drawing of where my paper goes out here, and I can set it and it'll be in the same place every time. Notice with these Speedy Carve blocks, they're kind of high off of here. So a system like this, which is just a corner cut out of mat board, and then I've drawn a 1 inch margin, would work great for unmounted lino because there's not much of a height difference there. Also, something like this could be really good because you could use it for different sizes of prints, no problem. Speedy Carve is about 3/8 of an inch high or so. Could also, this is Sheena, that would be great for this. And then this is Ready Cut, which is a Dick Blick product, which is very similar. There's also Moo Carve, which tends to be like 1/2 inch high kind of thing, 3/4 of an inch high. So what I found that works, or actually I didn't find it, I stole it. My colleague and friend Candace Garlock was messing around with registration that looked something like this. So it had the same corner thing, but she had cut a hole where the block could go. Great idea, because that way I don't have this big difference in height like I do here. And why that's a problem is that if I want really tight registration, it's kind of awkward having to come up onto the block like that. She had used a setup like this where she had her bottom piece be a piece of foam core. I've done the same kind of thing just with mat board that I had, and then glued with a glue stick 2 more pieces, layers here, so it gets up so that it's just a little bit lower than my block, which makes it really easy to place my paper and print and be really consistent on where it's going to hit. The reason we care about that is, of course, so we get a nice print that has nice even margins. But what if you decide you want to do 2 colors, right? What if I decide I wanted to print my sampler block in a lighter color and then line it up again with something else on top? Having something like this makes that very easy. Okay, notice I've also put tape here, and that way that's going to close that little gap so that when I put my paper down here, it doesn't have a tendency to go in between there. I've also made the hole big enough that I can easily ink it and then place it into this hole. Things that I made a note here for myself and these arrows is that I always want to put this block up into this corner. I have cut it large enough so I have a little bit of give. And also I want to always line my paper up here first and then drop it. Those little consistent things will make a big difference if you're trying to do multi-block printing.